Sir Handel grumbled continually. "My controller makes me shunt," he complained, "and take trucks to quarries too. I'm highly sprung, and I suffer dreadfully." "Our controllers don't understand our feelings," sympathised Gordon. "Now, if you were ill," he winked, "you couldn't go, could you?" "Good idea," said Sir Handel. "I'll try it." "I don't feel well," Sir Handel groaned the next morning. Peter Sam didn't mind the extra work. The trucks chattered behind him, but he paid no attention. High up in the hills, it travels down in trucks on a steep railway called an incline. Peter Sam never bumped trucks unless they misbehaved. The trucks coming down the incline couldn't see Peter Sam. They thought it was Sir Handel and wanted to get their own back, and broke the rope with a crack. Peter Sam saw them hurtling down the hill towards him. He shut his eyes, and a flying slate smashed a water channel. Peter Sam was soaked from funnel to cab. Rusty soon pulled Peter Sam away from the water. Peter Sam felt battered. He thanked Rusty and limped slowly home. "You never do," said the stern voice of the thin controller. "You can start now while you're doing Peter Sam's work, as well as your own."
Home at last. Peter Sam wanted to start work, but the thin controller wouldn't let him. "Another day's rest will do you good," he said. "Besides, I've got a surprise for you." "For me, sir? How nice, sir. What is it, sir?" "Wait and see," smiled the thin controller. The surprise was Skarloey. "Oh," said Peter Sam, "I am glad you've come home." They lit Skarloey's fire, and he sizzled happily. "I feel all excited," he said, "just like a young engine. I'm longing to pull my dear old coaches again. Are they running nicely?" "Yes, they're running well," Peter Sam answered. "But we have 5 other coaches now." Skarloey was interested. "Oh," he said, "tell me about them." "Cora is a guard's van. She isn't as big as Beatrice, and she hasn't a ticket window, but I like her best. She was my guard's van in the old days. Ada, Jane, and Mabel are plain. They have no roofs. Sir Handel says they are trucks, but they have seats," said Peter Sam. "So I say they're coaches. What do you think, Skarloey?" The old engine smiled. "If they have seats, they're coaches," he said firmly. "Sir Handel likes Gertrude and Millicent best," Peter Sam went on. "He always tries to take them alone. They have bogies, and he says they're the only real coaches we have. They remind him of when he used to pull our express. Both have seats for passengers, but Millicent has a guard as well. He sells tickets and travels in a tiny cupboard place." "I don't like that," he remarked earnestly. "Guards are very important. They need vans. They shouldn't be put into cupboards." Skarloey said nothing, so Peter Sam continued. "Did Rusty help you off your truck?" "Yes. He says he's come to mend the line and do odd jobs. I like him," smiled Skarloey. "So do I." Peter Sam explained how kind Rusty was when he had his accident. "It's a pity Duncan doesn't like him." "Who is Duncan?" "He came as a spare engine after my accident." "Is he useful?" "He'll pull anything, and I'm sure he means well, but he's bouncy and rude. He used to work in a factory, and his language is often strong." "I understand," said Skarloey gravely. Just then the telephone rang, and Skarloey's driver and fireman climbed into his cab. "Come on, old boy," they said. "Duncan is stuck in the tunnel, and we'll have to get him out." Skarloey was pleased. He wanted to run, and looked forward to meeting Duncan. They found Cora and some workmen, and hurried up the line. "How nice and smooth the rails are," thought Skarloey. "They've mended all the old bumps. Rusty has helped to do that. I must tell him how nice it is." Duncan had stuck at the far end of the tunnel. His coaches were outside, and the passengers were helping the driver and fireman to dislodge some rocks wedged between the top of his cab and the tunnel roof. Duncan was cross. "I have a plain blunt engine," he kept saying. As speak as I find. Tunnels should be tunnels and not rabbit holes. This railway is no good at all. Don't be silly, snapped his driver. This tunnel is quite big enough for engines who don't want to rock and roll. They cleared away the rocks, and Skarloey pulled Duncan and his coaches safely through. Cora was left on a siding, and the workmen stayed to make sure all was safe. Duncan grumbled all the way home, but Skarloey paid no attention. The thin controller was waiting for them. "Listen to me, Duncan," he said. "There is nothing wrong with that tunnel. You stuck because you tried to do rock and roll. If it happens again, I'll cut down your cab. And your funnel, too." Duncan, abashed, was neither plain nor blunt for a whole evening. Rock and roll. When Skarloey's turn came, he was glad to take out the coaches and meet old friends. He met Rusty up the line. "You know," he said, "if I couldn't see the old places, I'd think I was on a different railway." Rusty laughed. "Well, we hoped you would. Mr. Hugh, our foreman, said, 'Rusty, Skarloey's coming home. Let's mend the track so well that he doesn't know where he is.' And we did, and you didn't, if you take my meaning." Skarloey chuckled away. He liked this hard-working, friendly little engine. "There's still one bad bit," said Rusty anxiously that evening. "It's just before the first station. We hadn't time." "Never mind," said Skarloey. "It's much better now than it was." "Maybe better, but it's not good," replied Rusty. "An engine might come off there. Peter Salmon's the hand'll take care, and so do you. But I'm worried about Duncan. He will do rock and roll. I shouldn't like his passengers hurt. What's that about me? I'm a plain engine, and believe in plain speaking. Speak up and stop whispering in corners." Rusty told Duncan about the bad bit of line, and warned him to be careful. "Ha! Ha!" he grunted. "I know my way about, thank you. I don't need smelly diesels to tell me what to do." Rusty looked hurt. "Never mind," said Skarloey. "You've done your best." He said no more, but he thought a great deal. Next morning, Rusty left Duncan to find his own coaches. Duncan snorted and banged about the yard, then clattered crossly to the station. James was there already. "You're late," he snapped. "I know," said Duncan. "It's that smelly diesel's fault. He thinks he can teach me how to stay on the rails, and then goes off and leaves me to find my own coaches." "You poor engine," sympathized James. "I know all about diesels. One crept into our yard and ordered us about. I soon sent him packing." Duncan gazed at him admiringly. He didn't know that James was boastful, and sometimes didn't tell the truth. "Send him packing! Send him packing!" snorted Duncan. He climbed the first hill furiously. "Well done, boy. Keep it up," encouraged his driver. They were soon near the first station. Duncan was pleased. Nothing's happened, he chortled. "Silly old diesel, clever me." And he swaggered along, doing his rock and roll. "Steady, boy." His driver tried to check him, but too late. There was a tearing, cracking, crunching sound, and Duncan stopped bumpily. "Sleepers and ballast!" he exclaimed. "I'm off!" And he was. "I warned him," said Rusty crossly. "Duncan," I said, "you be careful on that bit of line." But all he did was to call me names. Mr. Hugh kept turning Rusty's handle. "Come on," he urged. "Start up." "No, Mr. Hugh, sir, I'm sorry to disoblige, but I won't help that Duncan." "I'm ashamed of you, Rusty," said Skarloey severely. "Think of the passengers. What are they going to do?" "Oh," said Rusty, "I'd forgotten them. I'm sorry, Mr. Hugh, sir. We must help the passengers." And his engine roared into life. "Oh dear," thought Duncan. "Now everyone will know how silly I am." Presently, Mr. Hugh and Rusty brought sleepers and old rails. Mr. Hugh showed the passengers how to use them, and they soon levered Duncan back to the line. Duncan was extra careful all day. Rusty, he whispered that night, thank you for helping. I'm sorry I was rude. That's all right. I wish all Diesels were like you. Let's be friends. Suits me, smiled Rusty. We'll mend that bad bit first thing tomorrow.